Becoming yourself sounds beautiful, freeing, empowering, almost magical. But no one tells you the truth. Becoming yourself is painful. It feels like losing pieces of your life. Like outgrowing people you once loved. Like waking up one day and realizing you don't recognize who you've been. So why does something so right feel so wrong? You were never fully yourself. What if the person you think you are isn't really you? What if your personality, your choices, even your dreams were shaped long before you ever had a say? And what if becoming yourself means realizing that you were never fully yourself to begin with? The programming begins early. From the moment you were born, you entered a world that already had expectations for you. Before you could speak, before you could think for yourself, you were being taught how to behave. Be quiet, be polite, don't do that, this is good, that is bad. You didn't question it. You couldn't. Because as a child, your survival depended on acceptance. So you adapted. You learned quickly that being loved often meant being liked. And being liked meant fitting in. So piece by piece, you started shaping yourself to meet the expectations around you. The mask you didn't notice. At first, it was small. Changing how you spoke. Hiding certain emotions. Pretending to enjoy things you didn't really care about. But over time, it became something bigger. A mask. A version of yourself. Designed to avoid rejection. To gain approval. To feel safe. And the scariest part? You got so used to wearing it that you forgot it was even there. You started believing that this version of you was the real you. Fear of rejection shapes identity. Deep down, most of what you became was driven by one simple fear. Rejection. The fear of being judged. The fear of being misunderstood. The fear of not being enough. So you adjusted. You became more agreeable. More acceptable. More predictable. Not because that's who you truly were, but because that's who the world rewarded. And every time you chose acceptance over authenticity, you moved a little further away from yourself, living a borrowed identity. At some point, without realizing it, you stopped asking yourself, what do I actually want? Instead, your life became a series of reactions. Doing what was expected. Following paths that felt right to others. Chasing goals that didn't truly belong to you. A career you didn't choose. Opinions you didn't question. A lifestyle that doesn't feel like yours. You were living, but not as yourself. You were living a borrowed identity. The moment of realization. And then, something shifts. It could be a moment of silence. A failure. A loss. Or just a quiet feeling you can't ignore anymore. You start to feel disconnected. Like something isn't right. Like you've been playing a role in a life that doesn't fully belong to you. And that realization? It's uncomfortable. Because now you see it. You see the mask. You see the patterns. You see how far you've drifted from who you really are. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The pain of awareness. This is where the pain begins. Not because something is wrong, but because something is finally becoming clear. You begin to question everything. Your choices. Your relationships. Your identity. And it feels like your world is falling apart. But in reality, it's not falling apart. It's being stripped down. Layer by layer. Everything that isn't truly you starts to feel uncomfortable. And that discomfort? That's the beginning of truth. The start of becoming. Realizing you were never fully yourself. Isn't the end. It's the beginning. Because now, for the first time, you have a choice. To keep pretending. Or to start uncovering who you really are. And yes, it will cost you comfort. It may cost you approval. It may even cost you relationships. But what you gain is something far more valuable. Yourself. When you start losing people, no one prepares you for this part. They tell you to grow, to find yourself, to become who you truly are. But they don't tell you what it will cost. Because the moment you start becoming yourself, you don't just find your identity. You start losing people. Growth changes your energy. At first, it's subtle. You start thinking differently, seeing things more clearly, questioning what you once accepted without doubt. Conversations that once felt natural now feel forced. Places you once enjoyed no longer feel the same. It's not that you're trying to change. You just are. And people notice. Your energy shifts. Your priorities shift. Your boundaries begin to form. And not everyone is comfortable with that. People loved the old version of you. Here's a difficult truth. Some people didn't love you. They loved the version of you that was easy to handle. The version that always said yes. The version that stayed quiet. The version that never challenged anything. But now, you're different. You speak up. You say no. You choose yourself. And suddenly, you're too much, too distant, too serious, too changed. But in reality, you're just no longer convenient. Outgrowing isn't betrayal. When people start drifting away, it feels personal, like you've done something wrong, like you've failed somehow. But growth isn't betrayal. You didn't leave them behind. You simply kept moving forward. And sometimes, people are only meant to walk with you for a certain part of your journey. Not everyone is meant to grow with you. And that's okay. Even if it hurts. The pain of disconnection. Losing people isn't always dramatic. Sometimes there's no fight. No clear ending. Just distance. Replies become shorter. Conversations become rare. Silence slowly replaces connection. And you feel it. That quiet emptiness. The absence of people who once felt like home. And in those moments, you question everything. Was it worth it? Should I go back to who I was? Am I the problem? The temptation to shrink. This is where it gets dangerous. Because the pain of losing people can make you want to shrink. To go back. To be more agreeable again. To silence yourself just to keep the peace. And for a moment, it feels easier. Familiar. But deep down, you know the truth. You wouldn't just be reconnecting with others. You'd be disconnecting from yourself. Loneliness becomes part of the process. There's a phase in growth where loneliness becomes unavoidable. Not because you're unworthy of connection, but because you're transitioning. You're no longer aligned with your past, but you haven't fully found your future yet. So you exist in between, where your circle gets smaller, your world gets quieter, and your thoughts get louder. It's uncomfortable, but it's also necessary, because in that silence, you start hearing yourself more clearly, making space for the right people. What feels like loss is often space being created. Space for people who understand you, who respect your boundaries, who align with who you're becoming, not who you used to be. But they can't enter your life if it's still crowded with the wrong ones. So sometimes, losing people isn't a setback. It's a realignment. Yes, it hurts. It hurts to outgrow people. It hurts to feel misunderstood. It hurts to walk a path that feels lonely. But becoming yourself was never meant to be comfortable. And the people who are meant for you, they won't require you to shrink. They won't punish you for growing. They won't make you feel like you have to choose between being loved and being real. So if you're losing people right now, don't panic. You're not losing your life. You're losing what no longer fits it. Facing your true self. At some point in your life, you stop running. Not because things get easier, but because you're too tired to keep pretending. And that's when it happens. You come face to face with yourself. Not the version you show the world. Not the version shaped by expectations, but the real you. And the truth is, that moment can be terrifying. The illusion breaks. For most of your life, you've been living behind layers. Layers of identity. Beliefs you never questioned. Habits you never understood. But when you begin to face your true self, those layers start to crack. The things you were so sure about suddenly feel uncertain. The image you had of yourself no longer feels accurate. And slowly, the illusion begins to fall apart. You see what you avoided. Facing yourself means seeing everything. Not just the good parts, but the parts you've been avoiding. Your fears, your insecurities, your jealousy, your anger, your regrets, the moments you weren't proud of, the choices you wish you could undo. It's uncomfortable, because for so long, you've been distracting yourself, escaping, avoiding these truths. But now, there's nowhere left to hide. The ego fights back. Your mind won't accept this easily. It will try to protect you. It will justify your actions, blame others, make excuses, anything to avoid the discomfort of truth. Because your ego is built to keep your identity stable, even if that identity isn't real. So when you start questioning it, It feels like something inside you is breaking. And in a way, it is. The weight of awareness. Awareness is heavy. Once you see yourself clearly, you can't go back to ignorance. You notice your patterns. You catch your own lies. You recognize when you're acting out of fear or not truth. And that realization comes with responsibility. Because now you know. And knowing means you can no longer pretend you don't. That weight is what makes this process so painful. The identity crisis. This is where many people feel lost. Because if you're not who you thought you were, then who are you? The old identity no longer fits, but the new one hasn't fully formed yet. So you feel stuck, confused, uncertain, disconnected from yourself. It's like standing in front of a mirror and not recognizing the person staring back. This is the identity crisis. That comes with real growth. Accepting the truth. But here's the turning point. You stop resisting. Instead of running, you sit with it. You accept what you see, not with judgment, but with honesty. You acknowledge your flaws, without letting them define you. You accept your past, without letting it control you. And in that acceptance, something shifts. Rebuilding yourself, facing your true self, isn't about tearing yourself down. It's about rebuilding, consciously. This time, you choose who you want to be. Not based on fear, not based on approval, but based on truth. You begin to act differently, speak differently, think differently. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because it finally feels real. Facing your true self is painful, because it strips away everything false. It forces you to confront what you've avoided, to question what you believed, to take responsibility for who you are. But it also gives you something rare. Clarity. And with clarity comes freedom. Because once you truly see yourself, you finally have the power to become who you were meant to be. You feel lost before you feel found. There's a phase no one talks about. The in-between. Where you're no longer your old self, but not yet your true self either. You feel confused, uncertain, disconnected, like you're floating without direction. This is where most people give up, because it feels easier to go back to who they used to be than to keep moving forward into the unknown. Growth means letting go. Everyone talks about growth, like it's something you gain. More success, more clarity, more confidence. But real growth doesn't begin with gaining. It begins with letting go. And that's the part no one prepares you for. Because letting go is painful. Growth is not addition, it's subtraction. We often believe that becoming better means adding more to our lives. More skills, more achievements, more recognition. But in reality, growth is about removing what no longer belongs. Old habits, limiting beliefs, toxic patterns, versions of yourself that kept you small. And the hardest part? These things once felt like home. Letting go of who you used to be. One of the most difficult things you'll ever have to release is your old identity. The person you spent years becoming. The version of you that people recognize. The version that felt safe. Even if it wasn't truly you. Letting go of that identity can feel like losing yourself. Because in a way, you are. But what you're really losing is who you had to be, not who you are meant to become. Releasing attachments. Growth forces you to question what you're holding on to. People, memories, expectations, comfort zones. Not everything you're attached to is good for you. Some attachments keep you stuck. Some keep you from evolving. Some keep you from seeing the truth. But letting go of them feels like loss, even when it's necessary. Why letting go hurts so much? Letting go hurts because of emotional investment. Time you've spent, energy you've given, memories you've created. You don't just walk away from something. You walk away from what it meant to you, from what you hoped it would become. And that's where the pain comes from. Not just the loss of what is, but the loss of what could have been. The fear of the unknown. Holding on feels safer than letting go, because at least it's familiar. Even if it's unhealthy, even if it's limiting, it's known. But letting go? That leads you into uncertainty, into a space where you don't yet know what's coming next. And that fear keeps many people stuck in lives they've already outgrown. The courage to release Letting go requires courage. The courage to walk away without having all the answers. The courage to trust that something better exists, even if you can't see it yet. The courage to choose growth over comfort. And that kind of courage doesn't feel powerful in the moment. It feels terrifying, making space for what matters. But here's the truth. You can't receive what you need if you're still holding on to what you've outgrown. Letting go creates space. Space for new opportunities, new perspectives, new connections. And most importantly, space for the real you to emerge. Letting go is an act of self-respect. When you let go of what no longer serves you, you're not losing. You're choosing yourself. You're saying, I deserve better, I deserve truth, I deserve growth. And that decision is one of the most powerful things you can ever make. Growth will ask you to release things you thought you needed, to walk away from what feels familiar, to trust a path you can't fully see. And yes, it will hurt, but that pain is not the end. It's the process of becoming, because every time you let go of something that no longer fits, you make room for something that does. The truth about the pain. At some point, you stop asking, why does this hurt so much? And you start asking something deeper. What is this pain trying to show me? Because the truth is, not all pain is meant to break you. Some pain is meant to wake you up. Pain is a signal, not an enemy. We've been taught to avoid pain, to escape it, to numb it, to distract ourselves from it. But pain isn't your enemy. It's a signal, a message that something in your life is no longer aligned. That something needs to change. That something you've been holding on to is no longer meant for you. And the longer you ignore that signal, the louder it becomes. The pain of growth feels like loss. One of the hardest truths to accept is this. Growth often feels like losing. Losing people. Losing comfort. Losing certainty. Losing the version of yourself that once felt safe. And because it feels like loss, your mind assumes something is wrong. But what if it's not? What if the pain you feel is not destruction, but transformation? You're shedding, not falling apart. When a snake sheds its skin, it doesn't mean it's breaking. It means it's growing. And just like that, you are shedding old layers, old beliefs, old identities, old attachments. And yes, it feels uncomfortable. It feels unfamiliar. Sometimes it even feels like you're falling apart. But you're not. You're shedding everything that no longer fits who you're becoming. Pain forces you to be honest. Pain has a way of stripping away illusions. It forces you to see things as they really are. Not how you wish they were. Not how you pretended they were. But the truth. It reveals what's real and what isn't. Who's truly there for you and who isn't. What fulfills you and what drains you. Pain doesn't lie. And that's why it's so powerful. The breaking point is the turning point. There comes a moment where the pain becomes too much to ignore, where staying the same hurts more than changing. And that moment, that breaking point, is actually your turning point. Because now, you have no choice but to grow. No choice but to face the truth. No choice but to move forward. Even if you're scared, even if you're unsure, you start rebuilding from truth. Once you stop running from the pain, something shifts. You begin to understand it. You begin to learn from it. And slowly, you start rebuilding your life. Not based on fear. Not based on approval. But based on truth. You make better decisions. Set stronger boundaries. Choose what actually aligns with you. And for the first time, it feels real. The pain has a purpose. The truth about the pain is this. It's not random. It's not meaningless. It's guiding you, pushing you, shaping you, preparing you for the person you're becoming. Every uncomfortable moment, every difficult decision, every loss is part of that process, even when you don't understand it yet. So if you're in pain right now, don't rush to escape it. Don't numb it. Don't ignore it. Sit with it. Listen to it. Because buried inside that pain is clarity. Inside the discomfort is direction. And on the other side of it is a version of you that is stronger, wiser, and more real than ever before. But here's the truth. The pain you feel is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is real. You're shedding layers that were never truly yours. You're stepping into a life that actually fits you. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's lonely at times. But on the other side of that pain is freedom. Real freedom. So if it hurts right now, don't run from it. Because that pain? It might just mean you're finally becoming yourself. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the most painful journeys lead to the most powerful versions of ourselves.